The countdown has begun, and the narrative across the XRP community is reaching a level of intensity unmatched in recent years. It's really being driven by the belief that the regulatory wall that has held back institutional capital is finally approaching its moment of collapse. November 15th is circulating as the rumored D-Day for a potential SEC decision on a hypothetical spot XRP ETF, a date not officially confirmed yet amplified across forums, analysts, speculation-driven circles as the moment the floodgates could open. The energy behind this rumor honestly stems from the precedent set earlier this year when Bitcoin's spot ETF approvals prompted more than $10 billion of inflows in the first days of trading. That moment was a watershed for the crypto industry as it demonstrated just how eager institutional investors are to gain exposure to digital assets through regulated, familiar vehicles. The sheer speed and scale of those inflows caught even seasoned market watchers off guard, highlighting a pent-up demand that had been waiting for a green light from regulators. That signaled that traditional finance is hungry for exposure to digital assets, but wants the legitimacy and structured access that regulated ETF products provide. For many large institutions, direct crypto ownership is still a step too far, but ETFs bridge that gap, offering a sense of security and compliance. XRP supporters have woven this precedent into a narrative that paints XRP as the next logical institutional darling, arguing that its established payment utility, fast settlement infrastructure, global banking presence, and a growing track record of real-world adoption make it a strong candidate for similar institutional interest. They believe that the ongoing regulatory clarity battle places XRP directly in line for large-scale adoption if the SEC ends its hesitation. The hope is that, just as with Bitcoin, a regulatory breakthrough could unlock a flood of institutional capital and mainstream acceptance for XRP. While there is no verifiable confirmation of a scheduled approval decision for an XRP ETF, speculation continues to swirl across both traditional finance and the crypto world. The lack of official statements hasn't stopped the rumor mill from churning, and anticipation is building as the date approaches. The community-driven narrative pushes the idea that November 15th is the final checkpoint before institutional investors move from the sidelines to the front lines. Social media channels and online forums are abuzz with theories, predictions, and countdowns, fueling a sense of urgency and excitement. Some voices are even suggesting that the market has completely underestimated how large the demand could be if greenlit. The possibility of a sudden surge in interest is being discussed not just by retail traders, but also by seasoned analysts and institutional strategists. Analysts in the hype cycle point to the broader institutional appetite for diversification across digital assets, emphasizing that the landscape is rapidly evolving and that new opportunities are being closely watched by major players. Many are speculating that XRP, if granted full regulatory clearance, could witness inflows even larger than Bitcoin did at launch, potentially setting new records for the industry and shifting the balance of power in the digital asset market. With numbers like $50 billion frequently mentioned as hyperbolic yet symbolic projections of the momentum such an event might generate, the sense of anticipation is palpable, and all eyes remain fixed on what November 15th could bring. The argument rests not on guaranteed outcomes but on XRP's perceived advantage in utility, real-time settlement, low transaction costs, scalability, and its role in cross-border payment discussions over the past decade. This fuels the rumor that prices around $27 would be only the beginning of a much larger move should institutional demand align with retail speculation, though it is essential to recognize that these numbers are promotional community estimates, not grounded in official forecasts or confirmed catalysts. So, as the narrative intensifies, the script really unfolds around this idea that the next 72 hours represent the closing window before institutions, theoretically position themselves for what some claim could be a seismic shift in the crypto landscape. Supporters craft this pretty dramatic image of the SEC standing right at the edge of its final hesitation, with the Ripple lawsuits near resolution providing the context that institutions have apparently waited for. Over the past decade, the financial world has been marked by a steady buildup of regulatory friction, persistent corporate hesitation, and to be honest, a significant amount of unrealized utility potential, especially when it comes to digital assets like XRP. Industry insiders often describe this period as one of waiting, with innovation held back by uncertainty and a lack of clear guidance from regulators. All of these forces seem to be converging now, creating a pivotal moment where just a single regulatory approval could radically shift the entire narrative around XRP, from being seen as a speculative asset to becoming a fully regulated financial instrument with mainstream credibility. In this evolving portrayal, the XRP ledger is positioned not just as another blockchain, but as a potential backbone for global liquidity, supposedly ready to absorb multi-trillion-dollar flows from global banks, fintech companies, and even sovereign-level remittance systems, if the right conditions fall into place. It's a vision that, while ambitious, aligns more with long-term technological aspirations than with the current financial reality, highlighting the gap between what's possible and what's actually happening today. Still, this vision is powerful. It's the kind of narrative that fuels the viral intensity of the current discourse, sparking debate and excitement across the financial and crypto communities worldwide. The script continues by emphasizing how investors often underestimate the speed at which market psychology can change when institutional signals appear. It recounts how Bitcoin's ETF approval, for example, flipped years of skepticism into just days of inflow-driven enthusiasm. The XRP community uses this historical pivot as their template for what they call the institutional ignition point, arguing that once a regulated channel opens, pent-up demand surges rapidly. And honestly, narratives evolve faster than retail traders can react. So from there, the conversation kind of takes off into the realm of hypothetical macro movements. We're talking about a supposed $10 trillion global liquidity wave. This is tied to cross-border settlements, liquidity hubs, and digital asset integrations. XRP supporters see these as part of a long-range transformation of global finance, but no official or credible financial institution has confirmed such frameworks. Now, despite all the hype, the narrative also acknowledges that regulation remains the determining factor in the financial landscape. The SEC has not officially scheduled a decision date for an XRP ETF, leaving investors in a state of uncertainty. And while no current filings indicate any imminent approval, adding to the speculation. The script reinforces that any claims of guaranteed outcomes, official timelines, or institutional commitments are really just community speculation, rather than authoritative announcements, creating a cloud of uncertainty. This framing is crucial because the XRP community's strongest storylines often blur the line between aspirational future visions and present-day facts, creating an atmosphere of excitement that must be grounded in realistic expectations. Yet the story being told across the community persists that the resolution of the SEC case has moved XRP closer to regulatory clarity than many other assets, that institutional interest historically increases once barriers fall, and that a possible ETF, should it ever be filed and approved, would serve as the formal bridge linking XRP's utility narrative with mainstream financial markets. As the script approaches its climax, the final message is clear. This is not a prediction of what will happen on November 15th, nor a declaration that a $27 price point is predetermined, but rather a representation of the soaring confidence, speculation, and energy within the digital asset community. It is a reminder that markets respond as much to narrative as to news, and that major catalysts, real or rumored, have the power to mobilize investors, drive discussion, and fuel speculation cycles. The video concludes by emphasizing preparation rather than certainty, that if an ETF were ever approved, institutional inflows might reshape market dynamics rapidly, that the current conversation reflects community sentiment rather than regulated financial guidance, and that the next phase of XRP's journey, whether marked by regulatory breakthroughs, market shifts, or technological adoption, will depend on actual institutional developments, rather than rumor alone. The closing note frames this moment as one of heightened attention, increased discussion, and renewed long-term focus on XRP's evolving role in the broader digital asset ecosystem, urging viewers to stay informed, evaluate evidence critically,